What's good, YouTube? Today I'm going to show you how I do my back handspring. So the first thing that I look at in the back handspring, or the first thing that I focus on doing, is making sure that I'm hitting a full extension off the ground through my legs. And what I mean by that is, when I'm jumping off into the back handspring, I want to make sure that I'm pushing all the way through here into an angle about like this. Don't confuse this up and out movement with a back tuck if you're already working on that. The back tuck is going to go through here, while a back handspring is going to go more through here. When doing the back handspring, I usually tell people to push back like a rainbow. Usually, the longer your tumbling skill is, the stronger it's going to be. So for the back handspring, really focused on getting that length in the skill. The next thing that you want to look at when going to the back handspring for the beginning is where your hips are and where they're coming up. So for the entire first part, like pushing back into the back handspring, your hips should not be coming up just yet. And what happens is a lot of times when you're starting your back handspring, you're learning it, you are so focused on flipping over and rushing the skill that you're lifting up through here. And that's exactly what it looks like. It's like a rolling motion. You never ever want that rolling motion in your back handspring because it leads to a really short handspring. So what that looks like when applied to the back handspring, if you lift your hips up too early, is your handspring will actually look like this. And you can see that my back handspring was pretty much in the same spot just now. It's because when you lift your hips up, that's what really starts the flip backwards into the skill. Your lower body, when you're doing backwards tumbling, is what controls that flip, what flips you over backwards. So the sooner you start it, the shorter it's gonna be. You wanna make sure that you're thinking push back first before lifting those hips up. And honestly, you shouldn't really see any hip drive until you've pushed back as far as you want to, or as far as you can, going into the back handspring. The next thing we're gonna take a look at going to the setup of the back handspring are your shoulder positions in relation to your head. So the head position is similar to the hips. You don't want that going back too early. So if you're doing a back handspring, you're going through here, and you're swinging your arms up and your head's already going back, that means you're leading the back handspring with your upper body, which you don't want to do. Generally speaking, the first thing that goes backwards in the skill is the first thing that's going to hit the floor, is what I usually tell people. And you don't want your head to be the first thing that hits the floor, especially in a skill where you're jumping up and out. You want your arms to get back there first. And that's just a kind of a good way to think about it. But you want your arms, when you go back, to be in line with your head, and you don't want your head to move until your arms have gotten to this point. So if you're doing the back handspring, it should happen in this order. So you'll start here, you're gonna sit back, you're going to push into it, you're not gonna flip and lift up until your arms have gotten back. Your arms are a good indicator to when you should go back, when you should be pushing off the floor, and when you should be actually lifting your hips up. You wanna make sure that you have something back there that's going back there to catch you. Now, you don't wanna hold your head here the whole time because you want it going back with your arms, but you also don't wanna throw it back like that. Your head is not what flips you over in the back handspring. Now, leading into the middle of the back handspring, you really want to make sure that you understand how you're flipping backwards into the back handspring. Like I said earlier, your lower body is what pulls you over. So what part of your lower body that's flipping you is your hips. Your hip drive coming up is pulling you over. The midline of your abs engaging your core. Your lower back actually plays a big role in your back handspring. And really important is the toe drive. How you're pulling those toes off the ground is really, really important in the back handspring. Now, touching on the toe drive first, a lot of times in the back handspring, people pull from their knees. And the only reason they land on their feet is because at the end of the back handspring, they hit this position here open more, which isn't really good because the beginning has no power, so the rest of the skill isn't really gonna have any power. What a knee drive looks like in a back handspring, when you jump off the ground here and pull from your knees just like that, you see how I never hit a full extension off the ground? Now, another common mistake in the back handspring that turns it into a knee drive is when you take off the ground and you immediately, like once you hit the middle, once you're passing through the handstand in the middle, you let your shins from here down drop behind you. So what that looks like is this. When you go here like this and you push, like that. That puts a lot of unnecessary weight in places that it shouldn't be in your body. So you really want to make sure that you don't think drive from your knees, you think lift your toes up. And this all happens in conjunction together. So you push off the floor, you're flipping backwards, your legs are gonna be a little bit behind you, and this is where your lower back really comes into play. A lot of people, when they do back handsprings, they think it all happens in your lower back, which just isn't the case. Your lower back is not meant to do that. Your lower back actually, it wants to be tight right there. Otherwise, the concept of pulling your toes up and driving them up doesn't really make sense when you can't feel that. It's almost like if you're trying to pull your arm up and you don't keep your wrist tight and you keep your wrist right here the whole time, it's kind of like that. You want to make sure you have some pressure you're pulling through if your fingers are your toes and your wrist is your lower back, you want to keep that tight so you have something to pull against, if that makes it kind of easier to understand. And just a quick reminder, if you don't understand something I talk about in this video, feel free to leave a comment down below. But I also have a tips and tricks video where I go through a bunch of different handspring drills, which is down in the description. You can click on that and go watch that, where I go over a bunch of different techniques and stuff you can do to kind of understand these body positions more without really understanding the physics behind them. You can kind of drill those patterns like the snap down and everything and getting these correct body positions in without doing the back handspring, which in turn translates to a better back handspring. So make sure you go check that video out in the description. The link is in the description below. Go check that out, watch it, understand it better, and then you can try the back handspring. But anyway, once you've started flipping backwards, you've kept your lower back tight, you're driving your toes over, you're engaging your core and you're flipping back and you've reached the middle of the back handspring. This is where a lot of other mistakes usually happen, where people end up leaving their head out and stopping with their arms behind them. And what that looks like, if you leave your head out and stop your arms going behind you, like here, like that. So specifically, if you're working on back handsprings and you're experiencing any wrist pain on the top of your hand, actually I feel some now because of that. Whew. If you feel any wrist pain on the top of your hand or on the bottom, like in the lower areas down here, and you've been doing back handsprings for a while, chances are it's from your back handspring and doing it incorrectly. Doing a correct back handspring, there's literally no pressure in that tiny little wrist joint. It all comes through your shoulders. Now, when tumbling, you want to make sure that your body is pulling through the entire way. What I mean by that is, when you're doing a back handspring, we'll use a back handspring specifically since that's what we're working on. If you're one of those people who just throw their arms back and stop pulling from your arms, you're probably gonna stop your arms behind you and your head's gonna be out and you're gonna put a lot of weight in those wrists. You wanna engage your body, throw your body all the way through and keep pulling the entirety of the skill. You're not done pulling in the skill until you've landed the rebound. It's really important that you understand that, because if you stop pulling through, you're missing out on a lot of power that you could get in the back handspring. So instead of stopping your arms right here and just not pulling it all, pull all the way through, and I usually say, drive the top of your hand through your shoulders, drive that through, pull all the way until your arms are actually in front of you, and the back handspring should look like this. Whew. Microphone keeps falling out. That way you can block through your shoulders more. Now, speaking on that shoulder block, you want to make sure, and this is something that I think is really important to visit the tips and tricks videos so you can really understand how to push through your shoulders, because the back handspring can actually be really dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous skills that I've taught, honestly, because people put a lot of pressure in their elbows, which can lead to hyperextended or even breaking your elbows, which you really don't want. You want to make sure you're putting that weight, passing it through your body instead of just stopping down in the middle and pushing through your shoulders. Now, speaking on the subject of passing through, if you're doing your back handspring and at any point in the back handspring, you can watch yourself in the video that you're taking, or you can feel yourself stopping in your handstand like this, you want to make sure that you stop that and that you keep driving your body through. It's really important that you're not stopping in the middle and you're carrying your power through the back handspring instead of stopping it in your arms, because what that's doing is you're essentially jumping back and dropping all that weight onto your vulnerable joints like your elbows and your wrists when you don't want to do. So make sure that you absorb through your shoulders, push through that, flick through your wrists, and then coming down to the end, this is where it's really important to engage your stomach. As you're pulling your feet through, you're going to snap, and depending on what you want to do out of the back handspring, so say you want to do back handspring, from there, you're going to block through your shoulders and snap, chest up, toes in front, and push back through your toes and repeat the process, depending on what you're doing. So back handspring, for example, would do that. Now, if you want to snap and stand up and say do back handspring, back tuck, you're going to block off your shoulders snap your feet behind you and stand up through here, and that's called blocking. That changes your momentum from one way to another. So if this is your feet and you snap the floor here, it'll stand you straight up and down instead of pulling you backwards. Whereas if you block off your shoulders, snap your feet in front, it'll shoot you back to tumble out of it, to do something, whatever you want. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That's how I do my back handspring. I'm gonna put some slow motion examples. As always, if you don't understand a concept that I've explained in this video, make sure you go check out my tips and tricks video. The link is in the description down below. There's a bunch of different back handspring drills in that will really help you strengthen those weak points in the skill for you. And I really recommend them. If you've never done your back handspring, you're really just trying to learn it from scratch, I really recommend you doing these drills for a little bit before actually attempting the back handspring. It'll make a huge difference in not only your confidence in the skill, but the way you actually perform the skill. It's easier to do it right the first time. Just remember that there is no drill that will actually do the skill for you. In order to improve on the back handspring, you actually have to do it. So at the end of the day, drills are awesome, but make sure you are practicing the actual back handspring. That being said, guys, I will catch you in the next video. Until then, I am out. Pushing, hands in front. Pushing, hands in front. Whew, microphone came off. We still good? Hands in front, like that. Actually, I'm gonna redo that.